Hey everybody, Dr. David Wank here from Short Hills Design, and I'm making this kind of off-the-cuff video and this presentation because my team, we're a web development firm, mostly with healthcare clients, and we're just having a tricky time getting through ClickUp and really getting the basics down and everyone on the same page. So I figured I made a Google slideshow for them, for our team, and I said, you know what? This is stuff that I could share that kind of has some foundational information, and hopefully you guys will find this helpful. Obviously, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments or hit us up on our website or on Twitter. So this is just an introduction to spaces and views in my own way. So, okay. So first we're going to talk about organization. So spaces. So for ClickUp, the top level is a space. And so under the spaces, you have any spaces that you need. For us, I have a space that I do websites, our local SEO and Google My Business, maintenance, migrations, blah, 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 blah. You guys can read that. I don't have to read that through. So what some people do is they go by client, Dr. Smith, Dr. Jones, Dr. whatever, or however, your clients are, or by company. For me, because I have different teams that work on different things, our SEO team doesn't necessarily deal with websites. And our maintenance team doesn't necessarily deal with, local SEO. So that's why I feel like if I have just all the websites in one place for me, it's a lot easier because I can see, hey, wait a minute, what phase are we in on this project or what's the story? But it's up to you. It's how I do it. There's a million ways. So that's a space. Now, this is covered up because this is for my team originally, and I don't want to show you, have some privacy, and I wasn't going to go export all these images again and blur them and blah, 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 blah. So in the spaces, you can have any combination of folders, lists, let me pause that. You can have folders, like here you see a folder. You can have lists or any combination of folders and lists. And that's where it kind of gets confusing. So now in our setup, specifically here for these clients, we have a single folder for each client project in a space. So I showed you before, under websites, we have all of our client websites are here. And so, the client WP folder has the client's website. So this would be, Dr. A, WP website, Dr. B, WP website, whatever it happens to be. Now, so the lists are the root organizational feature when you're tracking tasks in ClickUp. Now, ClickUp, official ClickUp might tell you something different. That's what I figured out as for our team. And so I use cakes as an example so we can kind of make it project agnostic. So let's just say that we are tracking recipes. And so our folder here is going to be cakes. And then each list has the steps for a specific recipe. Here's my chocolate cake steps, my lemon cake steps, my fruit cake steps. Now stick with me because there's a reason I'm making all these lists separate into one folder to show you what we could do with it. But lists are kind of the core way that we handle anything in ClickUp. So the overall hierarchy is going to be a space, and let's say in this case our space is recipes. Again, there's no right way to do this. But the space is recipes. Then we have a folder for cakes, folder for pies, folder for cookies. I was hungry when I made this. And then chocolate cake is a list with to-dos. Lemon cake is a list, fruit cake is a list, etc., etc. Now, maybe you have so many cakes recipes that for you, each space might be, we might say that, hey, this whole ClickUp thing, this whole, mine's called Short Hills Design, yours might be recipes. And so for you, you might have spaces. You're a professional chef. Your space might be, cakes, pies, entree, So again, that's up to you, the level of, I don't know any more than 3 cakes. So maybe 4 or 5 I could name if I had to. But you might know of 30 different cakes, and it might not make sense for you to have cakes as a list. It might make sense for you to have cakes as a space, then with subtypes as a folder, and then lists under there. However your organization works for you, but this is the core structure. So you've got a folder. Under a folder, it has lists. Now, expanding it one level further is what we talked about before. So lists can live inside a folder, which is what we do here, but they can also live outside a folder. And that confuses a lot of people. And it hit me in the beginning. I was like, what is this doing there? So that's why it's really confusing. So in any case, though, so here is all of our cakes, pies, and cookies with our specific lists for each type of food. But let's say we have a checklist or a list here of to-dos to eat all of the items that we cooked here. That would be a list outside a folder. So that can be done. I don't usually do that because I find that frustrating, but because it just gets confusing. But again, it's something that can be done. So the main item that we work with in ClickUp are tasks, and tasks live in lists. So I'm sticking with our same overview here, same structure, but just now in my chocolate cake list, I have 3 eggs as a task, 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of water. Now, yes, that's not a task. Those are recipe items. Call it what you want. I could say, sure, mix the 3 eggs, add a cup of flour, add a cup of water. Fine. That could be a task. But that's, in general. So you get the idea that tasks live in lists. Okay, so now let's continue with our cakes example. So right now we're in our cakes folder, and within the cakes folder, we're in our chocolate cake list. So this is the default view of an empty list in ClickUp. Again, I blocked these out. This is our website space. We talked, this might be, a recipe space if this were recipes, and this might be, I don't know, vegetable dishes, salads, whatever. So under cakes, we have chocolate cake, lemon cake, fruit cake. We're now in the chocolate cake list. Now, why do we have a folder? Well, for organizational purposes, but there's another reason too that we're going to look at in a minute. So here's our chocolate cake empty folder, no tasks. Now I added 3 tasks to our chocolate cake list: the eggs, the flour, the sugar. Oh, I spelled that wrong. And the default that you get here on these columns is assignee, the due date, and priority. I don't use priority because, if we were developing software, maybe, but for websites, we've tried Agile. It's another lecture for another day. But for websites, it's a waterfall method. So the client's got to give me their discovery, and then I have to copy the discovery onto our worksheets, and it's just what's next in order. So it's not really a priority thing for us. So let's talk about now the basics of lists. Okay, so ClickUp, and this is also really confusing, but when you stop, it does make sense. So ClickUp has multiple ways to view tasks, and those are called views. So over here at the top, we see we're in my chocolate cake list, and you can have a list view, a board view, Gantt, table, other views, etc., etc. So it depends on how you like to look at it. My developers like boards for tasks. My project managers like lists. I like Gantts. Some of them like tables. So neither here nor there. So the default view that ClickUp gives you is a list view. Now, you can go ahead, and we'll talk about this later, is make a list template that you want to carry across all of your lists, but that's for another time. So for now, we've got 2 rows at the top of the interface. So the top row here in red lets you switch the view. So list, board, Gantt, whatever you want. That switches the view. If you were to click the down arrow here, you can manipulate the list. Now the bottom row here in this bluish purple lets you filter the results. So the default again is a list view grouped by status. And since in our basic list, the only status we have here is to do, which is fine. Okay, so ClickUp allows you to assign a status to tasks. And the default status, like we said here, is to do. And so all of our new tasks are given the to do status. And so you can customize these to-dos in almost any way you want, the statuses. And I think at Short Hills we use, I think we have a client communication status. We have a to-do status, which is not done. In progress status, which means whoever was assigned it has now started it. So when I assign, let's say I assign you a task and I put you here assigned, I only know that you've looked at it when you clicked in progress, so that I know that you've at least acknowledged that and you've seen it. And it's in progress. And then we have waiting for client. I put that nice big in red because I can't put stock images on if the client hasn't approved them yet. Then we have on hold, which I just keep as an open one. I don't really use it, but it's there in case with nothing else. And then DAW reviews, if someone on the team needs me to review something. Then there's complete. Again, you'll find the statuses that work for you. We've gone through many. But you'll find what works for you as you work more in ClickUp. Although you might want to plan your statuses ahead of time. If you depending on the kind of work you do, you might have, to do, then, open, test, open, testing, checked, complete. Or if you're using it for content. I don't use ClickUp for content. We've tried it. I use Google Sheets for content, listing it out, but you might have what is the status of this content page? It is, is the or the page for the website, has it been added to WordPress? Has it, what's the status? Added to WordPress. Content has been added. Images have been added. Has it been proofed? Has it been reviewed? Is it ready to go live? And then is it live? Again, whatever statuses you like. So the default view shows all of your tasks grouped by status. And once you change your statuses, that can get really confusing because it's not so much a practical look at. I don't need to know really, especially in a waterfall approach, what is in progress. Because I could just look at that, or what is waiting for the client. That might be something better off to do to filter on a separate view. Again, whatever works for you. The problem with ClickUp, it's so flexible. The good news is it's flexible. The bad news is it's flexible. So like we said, this default list shows you the assignee, due date, priority. And you can change these. And I like to remove priority, as we said before, because I don't really use it in our day-to-day working of ClickUp. So now when it comes to working with lists, we said the default is grouped by status. And so the subtasks option lets you determine how you look at subtasks. And the me option shows you only tasks that are assigned to you. One of the things that you're going to have to deal with in ClickUp is whether you want to use checklists or you want to use subtasks, or a combination of the two. We did all subtasks, but it slows down ClickUp. Sorry, ClickUp support, it just does for us. Then we used we used checklists, but then certain things like, what if I send out the discovery form to the client, check it off, and then follow up with client in 7 days to make sure they haven't filled it out yet. You can't add a date to a checklist. So instead, what we're going to do is, for those items that need to have really a date, that's the question. Does the task need a date? If the task needs a date, a separate date, then from the parent task, or the checklist item needs a separate date, like follow up with client in 7 days, that's got to be a subtask. But if we have like checking to make sure the client has their account set up, so do they have a GoDaddy account? Check. Do they have a Google My Business account? Check. Those are yes or no. Those don't require do that in 7 days. Again, for us. Oh, and the me view is cool because what's doing for me in this project. Now, one of the cool things about lists, and we're going to look at it in a minute, is the me option on the list level will show you everything I'm responsible for in this list. If I click lemon cake and I click me, everything I'm responsible in the lemon cake section. But if you click cakes and I want to know what am I responsible for, let's say this is a shopping list. What am I responsible for across all of these lists? You can click cakes and then click me, and looking at the folder level will give you access to all the tasks and all the lists. We'll talk about that. So, and assignees let you filter by who's assigned. We don't really use that much, but it's there for the teams that need that. So once you found a combination of settings that you like for a list, like what columns you show, what columns you don't show, you can save that as a view, as a customized list view. So you don't have to, have a list here that has list and this information, and then every time you go to ClickUp, remove the priority list. So I added due dates to these tasks, just as an example. Now, what I did is, up here at the top, instead of grouping by status, which is default, I group by the due date. Now, that could be helpful. The eggs and the flour are due tomorrow, and the sugar is due Saturday. Maybe that's when I have to get them because, the eggs need to be for something that has to be done tomorrow, that has to sit overnight, and we have to have fresh sugar, whatever that would be, for Saturday. Again, that's certainly possible, and some teams might want to work that way. And what you could do, but let's say you wanted to have a due date view. Certainly you can click group by due date, but if you're using it every day, you could save that view as a customized view. So now you could have your default list, and then you'd have your due date list. So over here, let's say we're going to add a view group by due date, and I want to just have that handy. So what you do is, we can see we added the due date here, and I want to group by due date. So you duplicate as a list, and now it's going to say copy of list, and I'm going to go to that copy of list and change the name, rename the view. So now I'm going to change that to by date. So now I have a list that's by date and a default list. Then what I did is, so I have a default view now that we haven't changed. So you have list, and what I did is I renamed the list view to default, and I renamed the copy of list view to by date. So now in this list, in the chocolate cake list, I have by date and I have default. That is good news. Now, what happens, and this is something more advanced, and if you guys want a video about that, I'll make that too. But now what happens though is this view does not carry over to the lemon cake and the fruit cake or whatever else I had. And it doesn't carry over to the folder view. What you could do, you could certainly go into the folder view and recreate this, or in the other lists. But what if you have multiple lists and multiple folders? And as you really start working with ClickUp, personally, I never remember what exact lists I had, what I called it. Did I use a dash or a hyphen or a capital letter? My other kind of job that I do is I'm also a general dentist. So 4 days a week I see patients, and my team is awesome. That's how I can run my Shortles Design, run our company, because my team members are awesome. I couldn't do it without them. And so we've got a lot going on, and certainly I couldn't go back and change all these lists. But what you can do is you can create a template and then retroactively apply that. So if that's something you guys want to see, let me know in the comments and I can certainly do that. So here we are now, we're talking about pinning now. So again, I want to save the number of clicks that I do. I don't like doing clicks. I want to minimize the clicks. So over here, if you click here, you can pin it. And if you could pin a view. And what pinning a view does, it puts it at the top. So over here, you have by date and default. But if you look here, it's telling you, hey, the current list you're looking at is by date, and there are 2 available lists. So if you select a list and you select the pin option, you could pin it. And then once you've pinned it, then you're going to see these 2 views separated out. So grouping, and we choose to pin it so you can see it. And then grouping if you have complex list views. And let's say, and again, I'm just making these up, whatever your use case is. But for example, I want to see really quickly all items that we're waiting for from a client that are sorted by status, or sorted by a status of waiting for client. Now you can certainly go over here to your, let's see, you could, if you wanted to, you could go to, you could come back here to the filter section. I didn't show you that. You can click filter and then show status, where status equals waiting for client, and then save that as a list. Or you can just do that and then look. But if you like that view, if it's something you use every day, maybe it makes sense to save that as another list. So you custom view. So you could have by date, what the client owed by client, or what the client owes us, and default, or whatever you want. So moving past the basics, if you click on a list, it's going to show you all the items in that list. And here's where folders, I should be clicking on a folder, not a list. And here's where this is really cool. So I clicked on chocolate cake here. It's what's highlighted in blue where the mouse is. And I'm seeing the chocolate cake list. Did I reverse these images? I think I did. I reversed the blue and the green here. So in this case, you're clicking on a list. And that list is within the folder. And I'm just seeing these eggs. I can manipulate this view of the eggs and the date and all that stuff. But now, here, and again, forgive me for switching the colors there. Here I click cakes in the folder. And now what I have access to is all of the tasks across these 3 lists. Now, you can do a million things with this. If you're using web projects, like for us, and you've got 100 to-dos in each of these, it really is not such a practical view to show all of these with all the subtasks. Now, I'm not looking at subtasks here. There's all parent tasks. But imagine if you have 20 or 30 top-level tasks, and each has a couple of subtasks, this starts to load pretty slowly now. Sorry, ClickUp team. So that's one issue that we tend to see. But over here now with this chocolate cake, all of a sudden, I've got everything here. So now, if I want to see where are we across all of these recipes, or I don't want to go to the supermarket tomorrow and just get the eggs and the flour, and then come back home and say, uh-oh, I needed it for the lemon cake and the fruit cake. So if you wanted to say, and let's assume this is a shopping list of tasks, and say, okay, I have to go to the supermarket. Let me look at all of my recipes here and see what, if anything, is due. And let's just say that nothing's due on the fruit cake, but the lemon cake has some of these due as well. I didn't fill those in. Click on chocolate cake. Obviously, I can look here and I can see what's due because there's only a few items. But you could filter it by, where due date is not empty. And all of a sudden now, I've got a list of what's, to do, that is due, and you could group that by due date. So now, and I'm not showing you that, but now I have a list of where, when you do any kind of reporting, whether you're building database reports or client reports or even list views in ClickUp, your question is, you almost want to work backwards from the data. I always build reports backwards. I will oftentimes take out a yellow piece of paper or whatever, back of a napkin, way too often, and then I draw out my report. And once you know what you want your report to say, what question do you want it to answer, then you can come back and build that report. So the question I'd want to ask here is, or the answer I want is, I'm going to the supermarket today, Friday. What do I need? So when I go to the supermarket, so I only make one trip or two trips, what do I need on each trip that's due for tomorrow and due for Saturday? And let's assume each day all the items have to be fresh, so you have to go both days. Make this easy. So again, you would do a filter here, and you would, I would want to sort by due date. But instead of going here to chocolate cake, sorting by due date and saying, okay, the eggs and the flour, then lemon cake, eggs and flour, what you would do is you come to chocolate cake, and then the folder, cakes, that will show you all of it, and then you filter by, let's say, what's just due tomorrow, or you group by the due date. And so that is where you come into play. Now, all for your recipes, you might also have tasks that are not to-dos. You might have a task that say, optional items. So in this cake, you might want to put some vanilla frosting. But I'm not sure, so we're going to make a status that says, for the recipe ingredient, not sure. So show me so I don't want to see the not sure things. I only want to buy the things that are under to do, and not sures will have to wait. So it's another way you could sort this with your statuses. Okay, so you can notice here that the list view above has the date selected and created that as an option, that the folder doesn't have the option. So that's the other thing here. So here's the list view, and as we said earlier in the talk, the list view does not have, the folder view does not have the same views. So whereas each list lets you create views to see your tasks in different ways, folders do it for you. But folders give you access to all of the tasks underneath. That's the big difference. A list lets you work with just those list tasks, and a folder lets you have access to all the tasks in the list. In a case like this, that's helpful. In a case where you're doing 20 websites at the same time, that might not be as helpful. Although you could certainly say, sort everything by due date and show me what's due next week. You could. So, in summary here, each of our lists, chocolate cake, lemon cake, fruit cake, can have one or more views. And so we might have chocolate cake by the due date and the default one, lemon cake, same thing. And for the fruit cake, there might be so many different fruit items that we also want to have a view of alphabetical by task or alphabetical by fruit. When you go to the supermarket, right, you have, tell you a little story that's an aside. When I lecture, usually to dentists, about websites, I tell them, you want to make sure that your navigation and your website looks like it's supposed to, like people expect. So if you were to go to the supermarket, for me, I would like to organize the supermarket in alphabetical order. That makes sense to me. With the broccoli next to the beer, next to that's not alphabetical, but the B's all together. And if you came to my supermarket, you would have no idea what's going on. I don't like the supermarket. I have to think I'm leaving, even though it might be a really good idea. So that's why we have to stick with convention. And so that's why, alphabetical by task, if these are all fruit, you might want to group the fruit in alphabetical order, so that way you can just go to the fruit aisle and pick it all off. So I don't want to go to the back of the store and get the eggs, and then go to the middle of the store and get the flour, then get the sugar, then go back to the fruit, then back to the sugar. So maybe that's something you'd want to do. You would, you could use tags in ClickUp or other, custom items, but label things as fruit or label what part of the store they're in. But this way, it's just another level of sorting that you can do. And again, the beauty of having the folder view is that you get access to all of these to-dos. Now, so we talked about that. Right. All right. So that way here that our folder, the cakes folder can also have different views, right? So the cake folder might have a to-do view for all of the, a status view for all of these items. It might have a, what are things that we're thinking about? The not sure yet, like the vanilla frosting and the chocolate frosting, Or you might want to see is whose job it is to go to the supermarket for all of these things, for all of your cakes. So here, so for example, we may see that we need a chocolate cake and a lemon cake for the weekend, and then we can filter our folder view to just show me the chocolate cake and the lemon cake, because I know we're not making a fruit cake, just a chocolate cake and a lemon cake. And so then if we, enable this filter, now we're just going to see the items in the chocolate cake and lemon cake list, which is pretty convenient instead of having to go to the chocolate cake list and the lemon cake list. When you've got 8 lists or 10 lists, this becomes really, really helpful. And then if we wanted to save this again, this to me is not a practical one to save unless, you get 2 orders. Your order is either going to be chocolate and lemon or chocolate, lemon, and fruit. Then it makes sense to save these as 2 different views. As a, group, maybe you grouped by date and, with only these 2 cake types. But again, depends on how you run your business. And then, and if you want, right, we could save it as a custom list like we did before. So that's the end. If you have any questions, please reply in the comments or get in touch with us. You can hit us up at shortlistdesign.com on our contact page or at Twitter, or you can also just reply to, comment on the video here. Don't forget to hit subscribe. And if there are other ClickUp videos that you want to see, I'm no ClickUp expert. I'm just a guy who's working with our company and trying to help my team get together with ClickUp and make it work. And if I can help you guys out, there's a video you want to see, and I know how to do it, let me know, and I'll see if I can put something together. Thanks again.